Hello and welcome. I'm Lori Buchek, Vice President of IDC's CIO Executive Council. Thank you for joining us for this exclusive presentation and discussion of the 23rd Annual State of the CIO Survey results presented by CIO and IDC's CIO Executive Council. This report provides an annual look at the status of IT leaders in the business world. The results of the survey offer an assessment of what has changed over the past 12 months and where CIOs are headed in the next 1 to 3 years. I am delighted to partner with my colleague, John Gallant, who is the Enterprise Consulting Director at Foundry, as we take a deeper dive look into these results. We're also really thrilled to be joined by two of IDC CIO Executive Council members as esteemed panelists, and those are Katrina Augusti, who's the CIO of Carhartt, and Cisco Sanchez, who's the Senior IT Vice President and CIO of Qualcomm. So we look forward to your perspectives and advice as it relates to these results as well, too. And as always, we want to hear from you along the way. So please submit your questions, and we'll do our best to be able to work through those questions either during this conversation or afterwards as well, too. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you, John.
Great. Thanks so much, Laurie, for that great introduction. One of the best parts of my job is that I spend a lot of time talking to senior IT executives, where I learn so much about their transformation efforts, how the role is changing, the kinds of things that they're trying to accomplish for their organizations. And today is really a highlight of that. We would get to spend each year some time with some of the leading CIOs. I'm so lucky to be with Katrina and Cisco today, and Laurie, who has this perspective from working with all the members of the CIO Executive Council, to really dig into the results of this survey and find out, do these things resonate, these data points resonate with our CIOs, or are they seeing different things in the world? We'd love to hear your questions and perspectives as well, and we'll discuss as many of those questions and perspectives as we can get into the hour. So if we could move ahead, Caitlin. So I want to just spend a second talking to you about the survey. As Laurie mentioned, it is the 23rd edition of the State of the CIO survey. And we instituted this survey really to get a better insight into the role of the CIO, which continues to evolve. So we really want to learn, how's the job changing? What are you working on? What do your budgets look like? All kinds of things. And we'll talk about some of the highlights from the survey, but it's much larger, and we'll be giving you access to the survey at the end of our discussion. I show you this slide with the demographics of the survey, just so you can see. Big survey, almost 900 senior IT executive respondents and a 250 line of business respondents, where we want to find out, is their view of the CIO the same as the CIO's view of their role in the organization? We'll talk a little bit about that as we go throughout. So if we could move forward, Caitlin. So we're going to talk a little bit first about budgets. One of the things we've done at Foundry this year is, in all our surveys, we've looked at budgets, because the world is a topsy-turvy place right now, if you'll advance, Caitlin. And we know that the economy here is doing fairly well, but there's always this looming recession idea, a lot of global turbulence. We really want to get a sense from people of, where do your budgets stand and what are you going to be spending that money on? So as we can see from this slide, budget expectations are pretty robust going into 2024. We've got more than half of the respondents saying their budget will increase, 35% saying that their budget will remain the same, and very few saying they expect a decrease. So Cisco and Katrina, let me start with that one. So again, there's so much going on the horizon right now, global instability. We're still dealing with inflation, maybe the tail end of it. How do these numbers look compared to what you're seeing in your organization? Cisco, let's start with you first.
Sure.
Do these numbers make sense to you? Do they resonate with you?
Yeah, they actually do make sense, and they do resonate. I think what we're seeing, at least in the market now, is we're coming out of this economic downturn. We're seeing the world come back and respond. We're out of the pandemic, I believe.
Yeah.
We're seeing China now reemerging back into it, and so we're seeing growth happening, and all that is showing in the increase designated here. At least for Qualcomm, we're seeing an increase in uptick, because we're seeing all these new green sprouts starting to come out, which I think is good for the business. But also on top of that, we're seeing this new emergence of technology. And I know we'll get into the AI subject in a little bit, but you're seeing this technology of not that and other stuff starting to form, which requires the IT organizations to think and act differently going forward. So I think that's why you're also seeing the uptick, in my opinion.
Great, and we'll talk about a number of the things that you brought up there. Katrina, these numbers make sense to you? They resonate with your organization?
Absolutely. We're still faced with the uncertainty that many are faced with. However, most organizations are seeing the technology as an unlock to help manage expenses in other parts of the organization through operational efficiency. And we see year over year growth in services and subscription fees. So there's always that 5% year over year that we're seeing in growth organically, but also continuing to invest to enable other parts of our organization.
Yeah, makes sense. Caitlin, if you'll move ahead, thanks. So we asked for the people who responded in the survey that their budget was going to increase. We asked why. What are the top reasons the budget will go up? And the big things we see are security, which almost any survey we do, security is one of the top answers. So much concern about risk and security issues these days. Keeping up with rising costs of tech. We've seen the inflationary influence in the tech market as well. AI initiatives, as well as, which I think is really positive, investments in skills and talents. Are those the driving priorities for Carhartt and Qualcomm? Is that what's on your plate for 2024?
Go ahead, Cisco.
Yeah, I think this hit it really, really well. When you look at of course, cyber's or security is always going to be a factor, and we have to play in. Especially you start moving different workloads to different areas. You have more subscription services. You have different areas of AI that you want to leverage. But it's a constant movement within the security, and unfortunately, you got to keep that pace because the bad people, bad guys, are also going after and creating new ways of attack vectors. So the need for security is always the biggest one. It's biggest in 1 to minus 2. And there's new ways of helping to protect. I think if we look at the technology services, keeping costs, we're seeing a transition from perpetual licenses to subscription in almost every space. And now there's even new tool sets they try to add on top of it of new capabilities that are co-pilots that help you do things. So we're seeing that starting to go forward that you have to do because it's running your business.
Right.
And of course, the AI wave has occurred, and I think but it's not, in my opinion, there is cost associated to it, but it's also what is the benefit of the capabilities or enablement that it allows you to have so you can reduce costs in other areas where you might have more costs in AI. And that's what will be the trick is how do you offset all 3 of these costs with other things that you're enabling. And I know Katrina kind of touched on it earlier in her previous answers. There's a lot of stuff we can do to help automate to allow for some of these efficiencies to be gained so you can reinvest your money in the right spots.
Yeah, that makes sense. And before I ask you, Katrina, I did want to reference something that you just brought up there, Cisco One, which is this big change in how tech is being purchased. So in addition to all the things you have to do, we're going through this generational shift in, away largely from capital expenditure toward as a subscription and, pay as you go kinds of services. So that's a whole other layer that people are navigating. Katrina, how did those priorities map with the priorities at Carhartt?
Absolutely. Very similar to Cisco. I will add on in the investment in new skills and talent. We are also seeing that in the top 5 for us as well, primarily driven by the need for us to become more business strategists and partner with the business on transformational initiatives. So looking for really those business architects, solution architects, and of course, skill sets in emerging technologies like AI. So this is very in line with what we're seeing here. And we'll get into kind of the AI investment a little bit deeper later on.
Yeah, we absolutely will. We're going to talk a lot about AI, and we're also going to talk about your talent sets and what you're doing with your talent set in order to address things like automation and AI and cloud and things like that. But Laurie, I wanted to ask you, when you look at those priorities in your conversations with the CIO Executive Council members, do these resonate? Are these the kinds of things you're hearing?
100%. Particularly AI is most definitely top of mind for folks. And I'll tell you too, John, we also see this in our IDC with the CEO priorities as well too. This lines up. The CEOs are very concerned about security, of course, but AI and making an investment, particularly on how AI is going to improve the customer experience. So all of this lines up with the things we're hearing and seeing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Caitlin, if you'll skip ahead, please, to slide 7. So I want to shift now to talking about the evolving role. Actually, no, I want to go back to one thing that I neglected. I want to ask how, with all of this that's going on, how's the purchase process changing in your organizations? Is the purchase process taking longer? Are there more people involved? Is it more complicated? Katrina, let's start with you. What are you seeing in the way that you buy and acquire technology, in addition to that move to as-a-service capabilities?
Yeah, we are pretty much fully modernized from a cloud and subscription model. So we've been through a lot of that shift already from
Right.
cap to op. But I will say, in times of uncertainty, there's always additional rigor on all spend within the organization over certain thresholds. So, we are seeing a little more scrutiny. But again, as I mentioned earlier, knowing that IT is an investment that can drive operational efficiencies throughout the organization, I think we continue to make the investments. I think there's just more diligence around business case and overall return on investment.
Yeah. And what about for you, Cisco?
Yeah, I'd say we fall in a very similar category. I think there's a lot of things that we've done to ensure that we can optimize our cost and spend. We also do a lot of ensuring that a multi-vendor strategy. So I'm not pinned to one. So I do have some negotiating and bargaining practices. So we do a lot of that throughout. The CapEx, OpEx is always going to be a more of a discussion. I think, at least for the space, because we're going so fast and inventing and recreating, we're actually, and it sounds weird, but we're actually going faster in a lot of cases, and the approvals are going a lot quicker because of the stuff we are trying to enable. It has a sell-by date that we have to hit. So I think there's a lot of that's going on right now.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear, Cisco, I'll ask you because you were just finishing up there. And Katrina, I'd love to hear from you as well. What are you telling your vendors right now? What are you telling them about what they need to do to get your business?
Well, at least for me, and there's a few things. I love being customer zero. So if you have my tech, then you have my ear. And if you have my tech, then let's start talking about how we can enable other capabilities inside. And so that helps. But we do tell our vendors, there's a lot of, it depends. Hardware, software is a little bit different, but in the hardware space, there is options. There is options in cloud and I think they need to be very well aware of why and how come. And by the way, I will leverage others just to try it out, just in case we break up on our next date.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then on the software side, I think the software we're positioning, how do you ensure that you don't have vendor lock-in? How do you ensure you can scale? How do you ensure that you have thresholds in place so you're not buying the whole thing, you're buying pieces of it and scaling it out appropriately so you can actually understand how the market's changing a bit. So I think we're actively working with software and hardware vendors to ensure that we are maximizing all through. But the last thing I'll say is I also don't want it to be a transactional discussion. Right. I do like the interaction and collaboration and alignment. And so there are deeper relationships that we are trying to create, because there may be a favor one day that we might need to ask.
Exactly.
So I think we're also trying to manage that.
Does that line up with you, Katrina?
Absolutely. Yeah, Cisco was a great segue. I would say partnership, right? I mean, we're looking for suppliers that will innovate with us, that will partner with us, that will do proof of concepts, that will come to the table with an investment on both sides. So absolutely. And diversity in those critical areas where, to your point, you don't want to be beholden to any one vendor in a critical element of your infrastructure. But definitely agree with Cisco's approach as well.
Sounds good. Makes sense. Caitlin, if you'll move ahead a slide, please. One of the things that we asked some statement questions as we go through the survey, and this one really focuses on how CIOs view their role in the organization. So we can see that almost 90% of them say that their role is more digital and innovation focused. 87% say that they're the ones leading digital transformation initiatives and more than their business counterparts. And 85% say that the CIO is becoming a change maker. And that's the topic that I want to explore. And the good news, line of business agrees with this. So it's not the CIO viewing themselves in a different way than the people in the organization that they help and serve and support and lead. So that's the good news about the view. But what does it really mean? Do you view yourself as a change maker? And what exactly does it mean to be a change maker in the way that you work with the CEO, the board, the line of business peers? Katrina, what is a change maker and what does that mean for you?
This, I think I had mentioned to you, John, this is the slide that most excites me about the evolution of our role in the organization. I've had the opportunity to lead the transformation office at Carhartt. So being able to have a seat at the table to really drive and shape the strategy and direction of the organization and help enable that through digitization and innovation is just amazing. And what it means to be a change maker at Carhartt is really, the education, the advocacy, the assessment of the readiness and capability of the organization, and setting them up for success in the change journey as you start to take on some of these transformational initiatives. So I see it as a game changer and definitely something that I'm so excited to be part of and bring my peers in the organization along for the journey.
So Katrina, let me just follow up a little bit with you on that. Would the key word here be proactivity? Is it more about you bringing them ideas than waiting to hear what the needs are?
I think it's a mixture, right? There are always things in flight, things that the organization is looking to tackle that would be considered transformational. So, but I think that the line of business and even our executive leadership is expecting us to come with opportunities to drive, business value, the customer and consumer experience, as Lori mentioned. They're looking for us to consult and to bring that innovation to them as well. So I do think there's a mix, but we're definitely seen as someone that can bring those ideas to life.
Makes sense. Cisco, what does being a change maker mean to you at Qualcomm?
First of all, I love this slide. It's probably one of my
We're going to send both of you a framed version of this slide.
Yes,
so you can
with your signature on it.
Exactly.
That would be sweet.
That would devalue it. But
I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a few things, and I'll back up just slightly. I think in any organization, and this is not to offend anybody, but in any organization, there are two sets of people that actually see all the work happening. The CFO role, because they're helping to make sure that the budget's there and the financials there, and they essentially write the check. And then it's the IT group, because they're seeing what needs to be plugged in, turned on, scaled, supported, secured, enabled. And I think it's the duty, it's our responsibility, it's our right to make sure that if we starting to see stuff, that we tie it together and plug it in and identify it. And so we get to see everything. We're like in that front row of a great play. And so it's our responsibility. Now, the reason why I like the slide so much is because we're seeing all this activity, we know how to scale, we know how to secure, we know how to make this better, supported, and it's not a line of business. It's for the enterprise where needed. And so I think it's now more of a responsibility to take that action and say, we can do this. And what about this? And have we seen these 4 things that are related to that? And so I think it is important that we start to embrace that role and not just say, got it, I'll plug it in. It's no, what is this and why and how come? And we have 4 of them. We don't need it anymore.
Right.
And so I think it's really interesting. I think what it means for me to be help be a change maker, it's still partnership with the business, understanding your business, your all lines of business, understanding their goals and missions, understanding where the unique is and where the common is. And so I think when we start to do that, we can enable new capabilities to help drive additional change and new feature sets that the business, frankly, may not have known that we could have done faster, sooner, easier, cheaper. And I do think this is our moment, our moment really,
love that.
to go after it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, Laurie, I'd love your perspective on this as well. IDC, the council, Foundry, we're in the business of trying to provide insights and information and research that help people become change makers. What do you hear in the discussions with council members about this role of driving change in the organization?
Yeah, interestingly enough, it's really a hot topic right now. A couple different things. I'll add a nuance on the digital transformation because we've been hearing that phrase or in the middle of the supposed digital transformation for a better part of a decade and a half at least. But it's nuanced. It's not just make over your back end or your front office kind of applications. It's evolving the company to be a digital business, which also extends products as well too. So it's a whole different level of transformation than it's ever been before. And interestingly enough, I've got a lot of members. I literally just 2 days ago had yet one more conversation with a council member who was coming to us and saying, I'm being asked to be more of a business leader of technology. I'm being asked to come in and understand what the customer needs, the external customer, not just the internal customer, and really be, and actually some folks are even getting the accountability for some of the more experiential elements or the customer facing responsibility as well too within the organization. So I think that the role is like Cisco, like you said, it really is one of those moments for CIOs to take it to a whole different level for digitizing the business, but also to evolve the role to be really a little bit more than just an IT leader, but truly the business leader of which you are the expert of how technology can facilitate that. So there's definitely something brewing out there.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. So Caitlin, if you'll move ahead, that would be great. And I also want to remind folks, if you have questions or comments, let us know. We'll try to get to those. This is another angle on it. We asked the line of business respondents to the survey to categorize their CIO. What do they think of their CIO? And that could be risk assessor, cautious voice of reason, autonomous player, consultant, strategic advisor. So I guess the good news is that 2/3 listed their CIO, as a close consultant or a strategic advisor, although 1/3 put their CIO in a more operational role. So Cisco, how do you react to this? And in your experience, what does it take to be a strategic advisor? It sounds very fancy.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll work from the lowest number to the higher ones. I think in our role, it's also our duty to ensure that we understand the risk of things. And so it doesn't surprise me. We should be dinged a little bit because of what we have to do. It's the one that will get impacted if something happens in a ransomware or cyber attack is probably the CIO, if he or she has a responsibility.
Yeah.
So it's important. So that percentage doesn't scare me, and it's okay. I think that's the right amount. On the other two, the consultant and the strategic advisor, I like the jump in the numbers to help us look at we're now playing and interacting with the business colleagues more efficiently to help drive change, either to consult and give them suggestions on how technology works and the capabilities, but even more in the strategic advisor of saying, how do we want to make recommendations for driving an enablement activity? And I think if you look at both of those, that's a big percentage. And if you're filling out the survey, could it be defaulted to one or the other?
Yeah.
Because they're super close, at least on the definitions. But overall, that means something that at least we're starting to be in the category where we're not just plug it in, but how should it be functioning and what should it work and how you scale it and what is this thing and what do you want to enable? And so I'm really pleased to see how these numbers are starting to shake out.
Great. Are you also pleased, Katrina?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's indicative of the previous slide, right? Is if they're going to see us as those change makers and those transformational leaders, just naturally they're going to see us as advisors and consultants. So it doesn't surprise me. And back to Lori's point, it's not just about the digital components, it's operating models, it's the change management, it's effectively and successfully rolling out change in the organization. So definitely great to see that the line of business sees us this way, and I hope it continues to trend.
So I'm going to put you both on the spot and ask you to give me kind of a one sentence answer. If someone is viewing this that's a CIO and they fear they're not in the strategic advisor or consultant category, they're not viewed that way, what's your advice on how to get there? Katrina, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I think it goes back to what Cisco said, right? You need to know their business, right? So,
Right.
what are their strategies? What is the direction? What are the goals? How does that fit in with the enterprise strategy? Knowing the industry. So you have to kind of triangulate all of these inputs and come, with educated perspectives on how to enable their businesses. So, it's definitely, it takes a lot of effort. So to be seen that way in the organization, but you have to know their business. That would be my one-liner.
Yeah, and by the way, and we'll talk a little bit about this, but I think AI provides a great opportunity to start those conversations and look at how we can use our data to answer the questions they need answered and find the insights they need. But Cisco, what's your one sentence advice? If you want to be in that if you want to be in that strategic advisor role, what should you be doing?
Well, I first wanted to give Katrina a fist bump just to say it was like ditto. That was amazing. It's similar along the same lines. Mine is more of to be a great IT professional, you need to understand the business. And if you know the business, then you can start to be a better strategic advisor, but you got to get involved in the business. And the greatest thing about it, it's published. There's tons of documents about their lines of business or tons of stuff from the CEO that are doing it. So it's not like it's hard to find. It's easier to find, and then it's relating to it and how it can the IT organization can start to help facilitate change. But once you do that, I think the last I know you said a sentence. This is a paragraph. Sorry. The second part of it is then take action. Knowing is one thing. Doing something about it is another.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, we're all going out afterwards and getting change maker tattoos. So I'll meet you guys all at the parlor. Caitlin,
Okay.
if you'll move ahead, these next two slides, I'm going to spend a couple minutes just going quickly over the data. I mentioned to Cisco and Katrina in a prep call for this that I spend a lot of time presenting this research to technology vendors, marketing teams that really want to know what CIOs think and how CIOs operate. And I point to these two slides. The first slide that we're looking at now talks about where CIOs are spending their time today. Where are you spending most of your time today? And if you look, for example, at the top 4 answers, you'll see that they're very operationally focused. So security management, improving IT operations, systems performance, modernizing infrastructure and applications. So a real heavy mix of sort of the day-to-day operational things. Caitlin, if you'll go ahead, we see when we ask, where do you want to be in 3 years? What do you want to be focusing on in 3 years? Well, the mix changes. I want to be focusing on doing business, driving business innovation, redesigning business processes, aligning IT initiatives with business goals, developing business strategy. So clearly there's a gap here. There's a gap between what we're focused on now and what we want to be focused on. Do you see that gap in your organization and how you spend your time? And how do we bridge this gap? What do CIOs need to do to bridge this gap? Cisco, why don't we start with you on this one?
Sure. I think there's always blocking and tackling that has to occur to run your job. If you're not, I call it operational excellence. You don't get invited to anything else. You can't do your job, and you won't be invited to the party. You can't help innovate if you're not just running. So I think there's always that component of, I think, at least in my area, we're now got to a point where operational excellence is really good. Always opportunity. Now you have the ability to innovate and change. And so I think the reason for the gap is making sure the structure is perfect, the operational excellence and alerting, monitoring, and before they know. Downtime is very minimal. By the way, we'll have it. it's okay. And you're banking enough points in the bank to say all this stuff is running really well. And now let's go innovate. And I think you can do some of that in parallel, but you have to have some wins to allow for it to take place. But I do think in the driving the business innovation requires stability first. And so you can't innovate without that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Katrina, what's your perspective? How do we close this gap?
Absolutely. I agree with Cisco. I think that, first you have to focus on the foundation. So as you go through and modernize the different elements of your infrastructure and ecosystem, and also address technical debt, you can start to leverage technology through automation to be more proactive and start to shift some of that time commitment through showing of the stability into some more innovation and business value driving activities. So I think stabilization and kind of getting your house in order first so that you can shift that time commitment would be top priority.
Yeah, that makes sense. How scary is it to the two of you to see that security management is in the top 4, even 3 years from now?
It doesn't surprise me. It evolves, right? And it's always top of mind. There's always a new emerging threat. And it can cripple an organization. So it doesn't surprise me that it's there. But it's always something that's on my mind.
So yeah, me too. I'm sorry. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. It's better that one than the managing IT crisis, which is the last one.
That's good.
There's always a silver lining, my friend.
Yeah, that is good news. Laura, I want to get your perspective on this as well. You see this tension between being operationally excellent and spending more time, money, resources, doing the things that are going to drive the business forward. What's your advice? What's your guidance on closing that gap?
Yeah, and I think that tension is always going to remain because to Katrina and Cisco's point, you have to be able to do both. I think there's a very real opportunity with AI use cases to really be able to show how you can drive business process and business innovation using AI.
Yeah.
And so that is, if you can kind of carve out a swim lane for bringing that in as innovative opportunities for the business. And you're really the expert as the CIO and the technology business leader of technology. I think that's a way to be able to continue to refine that balance and also be able to elevate your position as a more strategic business advisor and consultant.
That makes sense. Caitlin, if you'll move ahead, I have to ask you about these other C-level titles. So we ask about a whole range of titles that could be in an organization, everything from chief technology officer, chief data officer, innovation officer, even AI officer now, which we're seeing 7% of these respondents, their company already has an AI officer, get asked about this a lot. Do these roles, are they part of the CIO kingdom? Do they report to the CIO? Are they a threat to the CIO? How do CIOs work with these folks? Is this an evolution of the CIO role? Cisco, how do you view these titles? I mean, does your organization have some of these titles? Do they report to you? Are they a threat to you?
Yeah. So I think in each of the different technology companies, there's a need for certain types of technology. The greatest thing I think the CIO role is in the chief integration officer that it does the integration for technology.
Right.
And it's either data, it's ML, it's AI, but essentially the CIO is helping to form and identify that because you probably have to secure it if you build something and you probably have to scale it, which all rolls into the CIO role. So do we have any of these? No, we don't have them that exist. Do we have a person that plays a role inside of the IT organization? Yeah, there's lots of them. The chief digital officer is multiple groups that are identifying how you can create an ML AI models to help optimize a particular flow. But I think if you start to label, one, it does take away from the essence of the CIO role, and then there's this counterbalance and integration has to happen. And so I don't think it should be a separate role outside of the CIO area, because I think this is a little bit dangerous of creating a technology group outside of the technology group. Does that make sense? Because
Yeah.
how are they going to do infrastructure? Where are they going to host it? And the CIO teams have already formed that. So I do think it's better situated underneath the CIO team, just to make sure that there's alignment and consistency and approach and scalability. The chief AI officer makes me giggle a bit because what would be the next one? AI is a tool set. It's not, and I know we said AI probably 50 times before we get to the AI subject,
Yeah.
but is an enabler, doesn't have some great stuff, similar to how the analytics was, similar how the ML was. It's how you using it appropriately,
Right.
which should be baked into the IT structure to help guide the right principles.
Yeah. Katrina, what's your view on these different titles that exist in some organizations?
Yeah, at Carhartt, we're not really the size of organization that requires having multiple chief titles in technology. So today we only have the chief information officer, and obviously we have disciplines within the organization that represent each one of these areas in IT, but they don't have the chief title. So I think depending on the maturity and the focus in your organization for each one of these disciplines, you might put more emphasis on it. But I do agree with Cisco. You can't have a chief of everything, every discipline within IT, as a hype cycle flares up and you get energy and focus behind it. So I do think we just have to be careful, to not kind of dilute and create confusion within the space.
Well, speaking of being careful, Katrina, let me use that as a little bit of a segue. Do you think, and I've been asked this, do roles like Chief Digital Officer or Chief Innovation Officer, do they indicate that within those organizations, the CIO may be failing at leading change and transformation, and that's why those roles exist?
I think it's an evolution of the naming of the role, because I've seen a lot of my peers move from a CIO to a CDO or things
Yeah.
like that. I do think there's a bit of an evolution just in the meaning of that. I don't necessarily think it's an indictment of failure related to CIOs. But I also think that the roles are becoming so expanded within the organization that sometimes you might need to carve off, for a focus. So if you do feel like, you're going to have a discipline, again, it depends on your organizational strategy, that needs more focus and attention, then I can see that. But I don't think it's because of, a failure on the CIO part.
Great, thanks for that. I will say that one that isn't on there is Chief Content Officer, which I was for a decade, and you really don't want one of those in your organization. I can assure you of that. So we talked about Chief AI Officer a bit, and I'm going to use that as a segue into a larger discussion about AI and your role in AI. I've had lots of conversations with CIOs about this, and seeing that they see themselves in kind of an educational role and kind of a role in spurring activity and responding to questions and those kinds of things. Caitlin, if you'll move ahead 2 slides for me, please. When we asked respondents, we asked the CIOs in this survey, where will you personally be spending more time in the next year? You can see that AI and machine learning was the number 1 answer. In fact, if you combine it with the number 3 answer, around, I think it was number 4, data analysis. Big focus on using our data, getting more out of our data. Is this true for you? Is this where you personally will be spending more time in the coming year? Cisco, is this true for you?
Yeah, I think it lines up really well. When you look at at least the top 5, I put customer experience in there too. There's this need for utilizing the data better, optimizing flows better, ensuring that you have a better output in case ever cost pressures happen.
Yeah.
But making jobs simpler and easier to ensure that you have the right culture in the organizations, and so you can drive better efficiencies and hopefully better health in groups. And so I think that the AI, machine learning, and data help to facilitate a lot of that. And I don't think it's just one of them, it's all of them that have to be done because they're different disciplines in different
Right.
areas. And so I think it's those. The customer experience, we always have to drive efficiencies and gain out of it. So it's both internal and external. And I think of that as for customer experience of in your customer base, external customer base, how do you ensure that they want to adopt and they want to use you, and you make it super simple,
Right.
probably using some AI, probably using different data, giving them personalization, allowing for them to think that it's their view versus a bigger view, having that touch points. And the same thing with your internal customer base of how do you drive efficiencies throughout.
Yeah.
So I think those 5 do resonate well, and that's where I'm spending my time. Probably the first one in just AI, because we are educating, we are showing
Yeah,
governance.
we're
we
going
are
to talk about that.
Yeah,
I want to
there's a
talk
lot of
about
that.
that role.
Yeah.
Yeah, Katrina, does this line up? Is this where you're going to be spending more time?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you had mentioned it, right? A lot of it starts with the education. AI has been around, right? So educating the organization on where we already use AI, where we see the practical use case potential for AI in other business areas. But it is definitely, to Cisco's point, coming up in the customer experience area as a predominant use case. So I see us continuing to do that, but it's only as good as the data. So as you mentioned, we'll have to continue to do that and protect our data, protect our consumers' data, make sure that they understand, when we're using AI and that we're doing it responsibly. So big focus, a lot of learning, but it's definitely, the pace has picked up significantly just due to the hype around it. And I think it can be a big unlock, but we're moving cautiously while we're learning.
That makes sense. And Laurie, when you think about the range of topics that the council and IDC address, do these look like the areas, does it resonate that these are the places that CIOs and tech leaders will be spending more of their time in the coming year?
Yeah, absolutely. It really is right in line. Those top 5, as Cisco was noting, they seem to really be hand in glove together. You can't talk about one without the other.
Right.
And those correlate exactly to what council members are coming to us and saying, what are you hearing? Can we have a roundtable member meeting discussion around these topics? Can we hear from some of the IDC analysts of what you're seeing as well, too?
That makes sense. So if you could go ahead, Caitlin, to the next slide. So we asked about interactions with the business around AI, and 80% of the CIOs say that they are responsible right now for researching and evaluating AI additions to the tech stack. What are the tools and technologies we can use? 71% are working more closely with line of business on AI applications, which is great to see. And 62% say that line of business is coming to them and asking about this. And we can see, we broke some of these numbers down by larger companies, 1,000 plus employees. You can see those numbers go up a lot when we look at the bigger companies in terms of these interactions. So I'd like to hear from you, and Katrina, we'll start with you. How are you educating line of business leaders, the board, the CEO about AI and what it can do, what it can't do for the company? And I guess I'm trying to get a sense of what does an effective working relationship look like right now around AI? And I'll just add that one of the things that I've heard from other CIOs is the first thing that they educate their line of business folks is, we've been doing AI for about 10 years now, right? We've been doing a lot of AI related things, but how are you educating, and what's the role of the CIO going forward working with these other groups?
That's exactly right. That's where we started, right? This is what we're seeing in industry. Here are some of the insights from key industry leaders around what the potential business use cases are, where we're seeing value. And then, of course, where we're already using it, where we see opportunity, but then, of course, educating them on some of the key considerations of using AI responsibly and what that could mean to our organization. And of course, we have to be back to the earlier slide, the risk assessor, the risk, we have to call out the risk, right? So it's a well-rounded education campaign where we're sharing the good and the bad. As far as what we're hearing as showing up as a partner, I think we are having some of our lines of business and some of our functional areas come to us saying, here's where we think we could use AI. And we are reciprocating in some areas as well. So we are definitely having a free flow exchange of where we would prioritize those use cases. We're also leveraging our partner ecosystem. Obviously, Microsoft being I think, I don't even know how many co-pilots they're up to at this point, but really, leveraging our partners as well to help us on the education campaign and help us prioritize and make sure that our stacks are ready to go through that partnership. So it's a multifaceted approach, but we're here for it.
Good. Cisco, same with you?
Yeah, it's fortunate that have the opportunity to work for a tech company that has been building AI for a long time. And so it's been like pushing on an open door. We all believe in this. We all know. So the education is not so much other than, we do it throughout, not just the products that we offer, but is the tool sets that we offer to the team members at Qualcomm. And then how the approach, we should think about it from edge AI, colo AI, or on-prem, and cloud AI, and the tool sets that are appropriate for that. And so it's like partnering, identifying the key capabilities, and leveraging some of even the tech that we built for inference to show the value. And so the education, easiest part. It's then the rollout and making sure that we don't have too much sprawl of the same tool sets that sometimes gets pushed to say, here's another one and another one. They're like, no, we got that one. Software development is a good example. Q&A is another example. And so I think it's more of ensuring that we identify what are those use cases and how to leverage them. What are the personas of taking full advantage of some of your tool sets? So asking the right questions, prompt engineering. And the surprising thing is we are going to be having an AI day in April AI Day. So we're going to make it a better, maybe someone from comms to help us.
That sounds good. So I'd love to ask all three of you. I mean, Cisco, you described AI as a tool set, and that's absolutely true. Another technological advance, and CIOs have dealt with lots of technological advances. But it seems different because of the potential and rapid impact it could have on the company. I'd love to hear each of you just briefly say, I guess, how should CIOs be capitalizing on this opportunity, both for the role itself, but also for that change maker aspect that we talked about? Laurie, why don't we start with you? I mean, how should we be capitalizing on this moment?
Yeah, to Cisco and Katrina's point, AI has been around for quite some time.
Right.
The flip that's occurred is with Gen AI and the democratization of these technologies for everybody.
Right.
It's like overnight, everyone woke up and paid attention. And also Gen AI takes it to a whole different level. Now you start to get into the creation ability of these technologies. And it really is going to start to impact everything that we do. It's going to impact business. It's going to impact roles. It's going to impact our ability to be more effective, even for the customer experience, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we're hearing from, peers of Cisco and Katrina is, you got to get ahead of it. You have to create some ring fence opportunities for people to begin to explore. But there's also a much more significant just risk profile with Gen AI as well too. And you got to get ahead of the governance and the policy because this can have very serious brand implications and the ethical use of AI. So I feel like these numbers don't surprise me, but I feel like we're in a very different change that's really going to necessitate the CIO to come in and help to educate the business on the opportunities, but also do the proper risk mitigation as well too. And so that role of the Office of AI, their chief of AI, I would advocate, and I do hear from other peers of Cisco and Katrina, is to really have that tightly integrated in with IT.
Makes sense. Cisco, how do we capture this moment with AI? What should CIOs be doing?
I think this is a great pivotal moment for us to get involved in, if you're not already, involved in other parts of the business because the AI is an enabler for productivity. It's an enabler for all lines of productivity. HR can write a
Yeah.
faster a job description. Marketing can create images faster, content better. And so I think it's like a pivotal moment to be deeper involved in the journey for everybody. And it's like every line of business, supply chain, legal, engineers, and so on and so on. And so I think that's the first part. Second is you have to start picking the ones that have the biggest impact, the
Right.
people that you want to engage with, the business partners. And so for us, we picked two main areas. We're doing all of them, but two main areas that we have more focus on is how do you ensure that we have the software developers be as efficient as possible
Right.
using like a GitHub Copilot, or we have a homegrown to show value of how fast you can speed up the development of people, or Q&A. But as Laurie was saying, it comes with risk. So when you start pointing this at all your documents, it points at all your documents. And so now you have discoverable of all your documents. It has the ability to find stuff you maybe not want everybody to find. It also does have some hallucinations. If you have two documents that have two different things,
Yeah.
someone has to read it still.
Yeah.
And so I think there's some caution. We're innovating with caution of saying, here's some cool stuff, but be careful of this.
Yeah.
In some of the software development, how much is written by AI versus a developer, and is that copyrightable?
Yeah.
So it's these things that we all have to be aware of, but I think it's a great moment in time for us to drive the change because we know the tech, we know how to scale it, we understand
Yeah.
it, and the other stuff that may happen with it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the way you describe it, and as Laurie described it, the CIO really should be the linchpin here. Katrina, you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to play that bridge role. But I agree with everything that Cisco said. While you're having your April AI day, we're having a June AI day. But I agree. We're seizing the moment. We're looking for those prioritized use cases and balancing the risk along the way. But it definitely has a huge unlock opportunity, and we're going to get after it.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
and it's just as you're invited to my April, if I'm invited to June.
All right, let's go.
All right.
And I assume Laurie and I are invited to both. So
Of
thank you.
course.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Caitlin, amazingly, we've got about 9 minutes left. Could you slide ahead 2 slides? I'm going to look at one of the things when we have all these grand plans. We want to do AI. We're moving to multi-cloud, doing more automation, changing the way we develop applications. Just so much on the plate, edge computing, IoT, you name it, lots on the plate. But when we ask people, what's holding you back? What are the things that are going to keep you from getting where you're going? The number one answer by far is staff and skill shortages. And if you'll go one more slide ahead, Katrina, when we ask, what are the roles that are most difficult to fill, they pretty much touch on everything you've touched on in this conversation. So AI, cybersecurity, analytics, enterprise architecture, somebody's working on blockchain, I don't know who, DevSecOps, those kinds of things. All of these really difficult roles to fill. And again, we've got about 8 minutes left. So Katrina, I want to hear, tell me about your people strategy. How are you training, retaining, finding, what are you doing to get the next generation of people who are going to do all these cool things?
Yeah, it definitely is one of the things that keep me up at night. We still are fully remote, so we do have access to a larger pool of talent. So that is an advantage. However, some of these skill sets are emerging tech, and the pools of talent aren't as deep. And we're also expecting a lot more. I think we talked earlier about, well, we want you to be a business consultant. So we need you to know the business. We need you to know the tech. We need you to connect the dots. So I feel like the expectations are higher than ever for some of these key roles within the organization. And then, of course, in cyber, it just continues to become more complex, so much data. Really being able to balance where you're going to make the investments. So these are very critical skill sets for the success of IT organizations. So our strategy is to continue to invest in those areas that we feel are critical for us to mature and be successful and protect our brand and enable our strategies. And then, deprioritize some of those things that are maybe more in the run state that we could potentially use services for. So that's been our strategy up to this point, and it's worked well. But and of course, back to your point as well, upskilling. We're continuing to encourage our teams through professional development as technology is changing at a breakneck pace, that they continue to stay up in those technologies and their disciplines, or even take breadth additional positions outside from a breadth perspective to to gain some of a more well-rounded skill set. So this is a big area of focus for CIOs.
Yeah, thank you, Katrina. Cisco, how about for you? What's your people strategy right now?
It's very similar to Katrina's. I think the greatest asset in any company is their people, by far. And so it's how you retain, and hopefully by retaining, you have the ability to not have as many backfills. So it's the culture that matters,
Right.
and making people feel like they are empowered, that you're retraining them, you're retooling them so they can take the next journey, because most can. And they understand the business well enough so they can start to pivot into another side of the business within IT or outside of IT, but at least they're adding more new value. And so we do that. We do a lot of, we're global, so we have different areas that help us with pulling in new resources. We work with, and I love interns, by the way. I think interns are the greatest. And I don't ever want to miss a generation of interns, because I think it's important for them to come in, see the culture, get adopted into this, into Qualcomm, and then start building out and creating capabilities. And they can transition faster and move around. We work with a number of universities to help identify skill sets that are going to be needing for the future, to see if we can start to influence the role, but not only internships, but that's also the curriculum. And so if we know that we're needing AI, and let's just say prompt engineers to help drive better efficiencies, how do you start to make that a more of a discipline?
Right.
And then, of course, we have contract to hire and retooling, retraining exercises that we go through that I think are all important as we make sure that we fill this most needed gap that we have.
Great. We are within 2 minutes of wrapping up, and I really want to just close with asking you really briefly. I'll start with you, Laurie. We'll go to Cisco, then Katrina. What's your key takeaway, not just from this data, but this moment in time for CIOs? What's your key takeaway, Laurie?
Well, I think it goes back to something that Cisco highlighted, that this is truly a moment for CIOs. We are at a pretty major inflection point with technology driving an acceleration in our ability to innovate, and it's really changing the business. So this is the time for CIOs to rise up to be a business leader of how technology can really support the business and the innovation within the business. That's my key takeaway. The data is showing that it appears that CIOs feel the same way as well too.
Cisco.
I would agree. My big takeaway is it's inspiring to see that the work that all of the IT professionals have been doing to align for driving change and enabling, and it's paying off. And so the lines of business are seeing it, the CEOs are seeing it, the CFOs are seeing it, COOs are seeing it. So it's helping to drive the change. But we shouldn't give up this moment. So we don't know if we'll have another. So I say, let's go after it and put a stake in the ground and say, mine, or the kids say dibs. Dibs.
Carpe diem. Katrina, what's your key takeaway?
Well, so well said. I ditto to Laurie and Cisco for sure. And it's just being in the IT space for 20 plus years, it's just so refreshing to see all of our hard work pay off and and deliver value to the organization. So I'm with you. It's a pivotal point. Let's rise to the occasion and knock it out of the park.
Well, I have two key takeaways. One is I don't believe that AI will ever replace a skilled moderator like myself. So I think that's one thing that we really need to keep in mind.
No way, John, it could do that.
Well, at least until I retire. And at that point, I won't care anymore. But second is, having the opportunity to speak with such smart, insightful people who have so much experience is really wonderful. Laurie Buchek with IDC and the CIO Executive Council, thank you. Katrina Augusti with Carhartt, Cisco Sanchez with Qualcomm. What a terrific discussion. Really appreciate all your insights, all your advice and guidance. Thank you all so much. And thanks to